participating in the meeting consents to it being recorded and being live streamed on YouTube. First of all, apologies. I have an apology for Councillor Scott Armstrong. Are there any others? Okay, for Councillor Flaherty, thank you. And can I inform members online we have Councillor Sarah Duffy, Councillor John O'Kane and Councillor Kevin Savage. Okay, moving on to direct declarations of interest. Members happy that they're taken as the meeting progresses. Agenda item 3 is the committee minutes. Just to note, as the decision of the GRS committee in May, minutes from the Planning and Regulatory Services Committee in relation to planning applications will now be coming back to this committee for approval. Can I have a proposer and a seconder for the minutes of the Planning and Regulatory Services Committee held on the 3rd of June be taken and read and approved as a correct record? Thank you. Proposed Alderman Kennedy, seconded by Councillor Lavery and agreed. Thank you, and we're all agreed to adopt the recommendations contained therein. Agenda item 4 is a report from the Head of Building Control. There are 6 items for decisions, so I'm going to bring in Tom Lavery, Head of Building Control, on 4.1 to start with. Tom.
Thank you, Chair, and good afternoon, members. Members, item 4.1 is the request for a naming of a housing development consisting of 4 apartments and is to the rear of 107, 109 Francis Street, Lurgan, and maps in Appendix 1. The members have noticed that the applicant's first preference name for the development is Honeypot Lane, and the applicant's main reason for the preferred name is that it reflects a locally recognised colloquial name for the area, commonly referred to as the Honeypot. However, officers consider that the proposal does not clearly meet the intended criteria of Clause 3.2 of the Council's policy as either a geographical feature or historical feature. In this context, officers are of the view that the applicant's second option, being Bridge Lane, would be more appropriate, and the applicant has advised that officers will bring this option to members for their consideration. So the recommendation for members is to consider the name Bridge Lane for this development consisting of 4 apartments to the rear of 107, 109 Francis Street, Lurgan. Thank you, Chair. I'm happy to take any questions members may have.
Thank you, Tom. Okay, members, it's with you. Any proposals in relation to this? Councillor Alderman Kennedy. Okay, proposed that we go with Bridge Lane. Do we have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Moutray and agreed. Okay, thank you. 4.2, back to you, Tom.
Thank you, Chair. Members, by way of background, members will recall in July 2025, the Council received an application for dual language in the borough, namely for Caldrina and Lurgan. And as per the Council's street naming policy, the application comprised of 2 stages as set out in the body of the report. As reported back to this committee in November 25, the application was progressed to stage 2 in that the officers undertook a postal survey in February of this year to canvass the view of all relevant occupiers on that street. And following verification of the survey responses, I can confirm that the responses were as noted in the body of the report. Officers are not aware of any written views opposing this application. The requisite threshold under the policy has therefore been met, specifically the responses in agreement with the application represent not less than 2/3 of the occupiers of premises on that street. As per Article 11.2 of the legislation, it now matters for members to decide whether or not to use Council's discretionary power to approve this application for this dual language street signage. And members are reminded how that discretionary exercise is set out in Article 11.4 of the legislation. So the recommendation therefore before members is to review the information contained within the report and decide whether or not to use Council's discretionary power to approve the application received by the Council for dual language street signage in respect of Caldrina and Lurgan. Thank you, Chair, and I'm happy to take any questions members may have.
Okay, thank you, Tom. Any member comments? Councillor Peter Lavery.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Tom, for that report. Yes, I'm familiar with the location of Caldrina. Certainly 30 out of 32 responses in favour. It's about 93%, so certainly a very high response rate for this application. And I note that there's no additional comments made, just the 2 non-responses, which are in line with policy or no. But Chair, given that we're talking about 30 out of 32 here and no additional responses, I would be able to view that we should be approving the dual language street sign for Caldrina. Therefore, I would propose that Council use its discretionary power to approve the application received by Council for dual language street sign in respect of the street in the Borough. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, Councillor Lavery, it's been proposed that we accede to this request. Anyone a second or Councillor Duffy, is your card in? I see your light on, but it's not coming up here. You okay? Okay, Councillor Duffy, that's you now.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Sorry, missed that, Ciara. No, I'm happy to second this. This has passed the Council's threshold, and yes, good enough for me. Thank you.
Okay, proposed and seconded in relation to 4.2. Okay, then we'll move on, Tom, to 4.3. Everyone agreed? Okay, we'll move on to 4.3, Tom.
Thank you, Chair. Again, by way of background, members will recall in July 25, Council received an application for dual language street signage, namely Irish, in respect of Parkside in Portadown. And as per the Council's policy, the application process comprised of 2 stages as set out in the body of the report. As reported to this committee on the 5th of November, the application was progressed to stage 2 of the application process, whereby officers undertook a postal survey in February of this year to canvass the views of all relevant occupiers on that street. And following verification of the survey responses, I can confirm that the responses were as noted in the body of the report. Officers are not aware of any further written views opposing this application. Therefore, the requisite threshold under the policy has therefore been met. Specifically, the responses in agreement with the application represent not less than 2/3 of the occupiers of premises on that street. Again, as per Article 11 of the legislation, it is now a matter for members to decide whether or not to use Council's discretionary power to approve this application for dual language street signage. The recommendation, therefore, before members is to review the information contained within this report and decide whether or not to use Council's discretionary power to approve the application received by Council for dual language street signs in respect of Parkside, Portadown. Thank you, Chair. I'm happy to take any questions members may have.
Thank you. Councillor Lavery.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Tom, for this report on Parkside. Just a couple of wee queries. So there was 49 returned in favour, and then 29, which was a mixture of non-returns, which automatically would be no, and returns marked no on one spoilt. I was going to say spoilt ballot, but spoilt vote, as you'd say. In terms of those returns saying no, do you know how many of there was saying no? And just to clarify, was there any additional comments on those, just so that we can take them into account if there was any? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Arby, for your question. Just to advise that two of the responses were actually marked not in favour. There were no additional comments on the survey sheets. We have received no additional information or either for or against the application.
Okay. Any other questions? Any proposed? Councillor Duffy?
Yes, Chair, thank you. Yes, this has again passed the Council threshold, so it has at very 3/4 or 2/3, whatever, and agree. So I propose that this Council uses discretionary power to accept the application for dual language signage for Parkside, Portadown.
Okay, I'll bring in councillor Fergal Donnelly.
Just like to second that proposal.
Okay, proposed, seconded, agreed. Okay, thank you, members. Moving on to 4.4 then, Tom.
Thank you, Chair. Again, by way of background, members will recall that in May 25, the Council received an application for dual language street signage, namely Irish, in respect of Corcrain Gardens in Portadown. And again, as per Council's policy, the application comprised of 2 stages, as set out in the body of the report. And as reported to this committee on the 2nd of July 25, the application was progressed to stage 2, whereby officers undertook a postal survey to canvass the view of all relevant occupiers on the street. Following verification of the survey responses, I can confirm that responses were as noted in the body of the report. No further comments were received in the survey responses. However, members will be aware the subsequent emails were received, both in objection to and in support of this application. And whilst officers would not normally comment on a representation, given the recent media inaccurate reports, it would be remiss of officers not to mention that in the Appendix 16 there are some statements in the email of the 4th of June 26 which are factually incorrect. In that, other than the responses of the Council survey, there is no deadline within the current policy for any further representations. And the other item is that the other application referenced in that email, it did not receive 100% support, it was 75% support. Members will have noticed that for information, the map for the street along with the location and photographs of the existing street signage are included in Appendix 15. Members will be aware that a report in this application was previously brought to this committee on the 1st of April 26 and the 6th of May 26. At the 6th of May meeting of this committee, members recommended that the Council exercise its discretionary power to erect dual language street signage at Corcrain Gardens, Portadown. However, at the full Council meeting of the 26th of May, a Council motion was passed which recommended that the decision of this committee on the 6th of May be deferred until a legal workshop was held to discuss how members take on board the weighting and lawful considerations where strong objections are made to by those who are not residents. This requested legal workshop was subsequently held on the 23rd of June, and this updated report is on the applications now presented to members for their consideration and discussion, and includes all relevant correspondence received by Council at the time of drafting this report. With regards to the result of the Council survey, the requisite threshold under the policy has therefore been met, i.e. responses in agreement with the application represent not less than 2/3 of all occupiers of premises on that street. Again, as per Article 11 of the legislation, it is now a matter for members to decide whether or not to use Council's discretionary power to approve the application for dual language. And members are reminded how that discretion is to be exercised as set out in Article 11.4 of the legislation. The recommendation before members is to review the information contained within the report and decide whether or not to use Council's discretionary power to approve the application received by the Council for dual language street signage in respect of Corcrain Gardens in Portadown. Thank you, Chair. I'm happy to take any questions members may have.
Okay, thank you again, Tom. Okay, members, 4.4 is with you. Councillor Paul Duffy.
Yes, Chair, thank you. Yes, initially was sort of against the workshop, but having gone till it, sort of second workshop I was at on dual language street signage, got a lot of clarity, some new members there, a lot of councillors, just weren't over it, and Stuart Beattie was very good, very, informative, all questions answered. So yes, it was worth going to, and it was all about weight, and I noticed there was objections to this, given tensions, could raise tensions, and I don't believe there is, no tensions, related to a street sign. So on the back of all that, I'm happy to recommend that this Council uses discretionary power to accept the recommendation for the application for dual language street signage at Corcrain Gardens, Portadown.
Okay, thank you. We'll bring in Councillor Kyle Moutray.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Tom, for the report. It's not so much a question for Tom, just more of a comment in general. Look, we've engaged through this process, and it's now, I think, the third time it's come to this committee, specifically with regard to Craigavon Gardens. Obviously, there's been 12 out of 16 occupiers have voted in favour. That satisfies council's threshold. I certainly acknowledge that. It's sitting at a 75% margin. Albeit, meeting the threshold by a margin of 1. Whilst the threshold has been met, of course, from the legal workshop, which I found to be very informative, I found it useful. Certainly, when you're dealing with these applications, they're all different in isolation. So I think it is useful to have workshops and for us to be given as much sort of legal access to legal expertise as we can be. But from that legal workshop, we've recognised that whilst the threshold has been met, we recognise that our policy is lawful, but the threshold is not the end of the assessment. It's advisory, and going back to the 2014 High Court case, which was mentioned again at the legal workshop, we are advised to take account of all lawful considerations. And that's something I've mentioned previously when it's come before this committee. So we have been made aware of other lawful considerations in the form of objections from 2 black preceptories, from an Orange Lodge, from a cultural and developmental association. And within these objections, I feel I have to apply some weight to the fact that they do make specific mention of the decades of division and violence in this area, and they have certainly demonstrated that this will make them feel a sense of destability in terms of the community relations in this area. They've also given us an insight into how they feel it will contribute to a sense of feeling intimidated within what is a shared space. So I feel as though I have to apply weight to that. It's a difficult debate because we also have written representations that I acknowledge as well that have an entirely different take on it. So it's a difficult situation to be in for this council and for us as a committee to delegate this authority. And look, I just want to reinforce again, I found that legal workshop to be very useful, certainly to myself anyway, because they're all different in isolation. But I just want to get that point across that I certainly feel I have to apply weight to the comments that have been put forward. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Councillor Peter Lavery.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Tom, for that report. Yes, I certainly do recall when these were brought back to the previous committee and they were debated at that time. I suppose when we look at the situation, yes, it has met the threshold in terms of coming to committee. It's got that 75% in favour with 4 objections sort of against, including non-responses. And in that workshop, we go back to it. We were informed that the threshold of 2/3 is relatively high, so always in my mind it would need a relatively high weighting on the other side of it in order to go down a potential refusal route. If we're looking at the additional information as well, I know there has been those 2 additional letters probably since it was last debated at committee from those in favour, one being a resident of the street, and his views were known, or his or her views were known, don't know who it was, but their views are known, and they articulated in quite strong detail why they would like to see this dual language application proceed, as well as I think an Irish language group for the area. On the other side of it, as Councillor Moutres touched on, there were 4 objections, 2 from Royal Black Preceptories, 1517, 141, and then the Craigavon Rural Development Association, and then the Loyal Orange Lodge there, 339, outlining a number of reasons why they would be opposed to it. Now, in some of their reasons against it, some of them maybe weren't sort of planning or local reasons, they were more objecting to the whole dual language altogether. And then I actually wanted to touch on and talk a bit about, in detail, a bit about one of their objection reasons, and it's this idea of shared space. We need more shared space in Northern Ireland, that is true, but shared space doesn't have to mean neutral space. I mean, I wouldn't want to get into a situation where residents feel that they could tell, say, for example, the Orange Lodge to leave because a few residents don't want it. In the same way, I don't feel it's necessarily appropriate that organisations can tell other groups what they can and cannot do in the area. I think that we shouldn't let the past hold us back, and it's been touched on in some of the responses about the divisions of the past, but I don't see that should be as a barrier for progress and moving ahead into more shared and peaceful areas. If we were to approve these signs today, we would end up in a situation where we would have a dual language street sign relatively close to an Orange Lodge. I think that reflects shared space. I think that reflects shared values in an area where you can have different, residents, organisations being able to be themselves and to go about their business in a business as usual activity. So it's a very interesting application, and again, there's two sides to it. Ultimately, my view is that it's a relatively high threshold which has been met. It's quite clear that some of the residents do strongly want these signs, and we're looking at 75% in favour. And I think that on the basis in this application, in spite of taking the objections, concerns which I've went through, the weight and I would reply to the residents wanting the signs would overcome the weight of the objections from those four groups and organisations. So I'd be in favour of council using its discretionary power in this case, Chair. That's what my own thoughts on it, but I do take into account, and one for the record, the views of the objectors. In my view, they don't override the weight of a strong majority of residents in the street wanting those signs. Thank you.
Okay, is that a second to the proposal, Councillor Lowry? No, it was just proposed. You're happy to second. Okay, so it's proposed and seconded. Are we agreed? Alderman Kennedy.
Thank you, Chair. I've just come back a wee bit on the debate. I hadn't got my light on quick enough.
Okay.
It's just the views of the objectors, I think, is very big in this case. But it's more along the lines, Tom, of there's 20% of the ones that surveyed in the street had loved it that much they've moved out. So, is there any threshold there of that amount of that they have to resurvey it again? There was 20 households surveyed and there's only 16. There was 4 residents had moved from it was surveyed till that point there. So that's on a thing with a narrow margin of only 1%. If those houses was reoccupied before the signs went up, it could change the total complexity of that outcome.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Alderman Kennedy. Our policy doesn't take account of the fact that residents may move out between the petition and the application coming in and the survey going out. In this were unusual circumstances. It's not, well, one of the other ones actually, the application, we did have 1 or 2 residents who were no longer there. This one, as you said, did have 4 out of 20. We don't know what the reasons are or whether they're in transit at the time the application came in, but we did adjust the margins and the targets accordingly. We took it that instead of 20, if the 4 residents are no longer there, they don't count as part of the survey, so we adjusted that down to 16, and then hence adjusted the target accordingly. But the policy doesn't, I'm not sure how we would actually account for that in the policy going forward, but it doesn't mention anything in that we have to either how we can actually contribute to those who were petitioned and those who were living on the street during when the petition happened and the application happened, and have since subsequently moved on from the time the survey happened. Not sure if that answers your question, Alderman, but as I say, it has happened before, just maybe not to the same extent as this. Yeah.
Such a high proportion. 20% of it, that's what I wanted. You only need who was not in agreement, and it would have been, that application would have failed. It's just the point I was making. I'd never seen it as 20% before in any of that the residents that had moved out. You know.
Appreciate the circumstances of this one are slightly unusual, but we can only bring forward the results of the survey as they were at that particular time.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Kyle Murtry.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, just to ask for a recorded vote to be taken.
Yes, just on the back of that, you can't say, people were moving out of an area because street signage might have been placed in the area. That's sort of jumping the gun as to what. Personally, I know one family moved out of that area because a house was burnt down, but it was nothing to do with street signage. It was just through whatever fault it was, but I don't think they've as yet returned to the area. I'm not sure whether they're going to return to the area, but that was just one incident. So, and residents come and go in different areas all the time for any multitude of reasons, so to put it down till signage is just totally wrong.
Okay, we have a proposer and seconder. I don't think we have agreement here, so we're going to put it to the vote, and the request has been for a recorded vote. So, okay, we'll go forward on that basis. Just give us a second, members, please. Okay, members, the vote is open. Has everyone voted? We can ready to close the vote. Okay. He can't come in the middle of a vote. Okay, members, I'm going to bring in Councillor John O'Kane, who indicated in the middle of the vote that he wanted to speak. It may be that he hasn't been able to vote, so I'm going to bring him in at this point before I announce the result. Councillor O'Kane.
Thank you very much, Chair. Yes, I wasn't able to vote. It came up saying no permission to vote at my side.
Okay, can you just hang on a second or two and we'll try to address that here? Okay, Councillor O'Kane, can you just hit your button so I can know that you're on there? Okay. There seems to be an issue in relation to your vote because your vice chair card is here and it won't let you vote as Councillor O'Kane. So if you're content, we will take your vote verbally now. Are you prepared to indicate which way you want to vote on this issue?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'll be voting yes. If that's happy enough.
Okay, thank you for that. Just give us a minute, members, please. Okay, members, the result is as follows. 7 voted in favour of the proposal and 2 voted against and 1 abstention. Those voting in favour were Councillor Donnelly, Councillor Duffy, Councillor Sarah Duffy, Councillor Lavery, Councillor McCartan and Councillor Kevin Savage. Those voting against were Councillor Kyle Moutray and myself, and an abstention was Alderman Gordon Kennedy, and a yes was Councillor John O'Kane as well. So that makes 7 in favour, 2 against and 1 abstention. Okay, I hope that's clear for everyone. Okay. Okay. On that basis then we move on to 4.5, and again I'll bring in Tom Lavery.
Thank you, Chair. Members, again, by way of background, you recall that in May 2025, Council received an application for dual language street signage, namely in Irish, for Ballyoran Hill in Portadown. And as per the Council's adopted street name and numbering policy, the application process comprised 2 stages as set out in the body of the report. Again, as reported to this committee on the 2nd of July, this application was progressed to stage 2, whereby officers undertook a postal survey to canvass the view of all relevant occupiers in this street. And following verification of the survey responses, I can confirm that responses were as noted in the body of the report. At the time, no further comments were received from the survey responses. However, subsequent emails were received both in objection to this application, which are at Appendix 21, and also emails were received in support of the application, which are Appendix 23. For members' information, a map of the street along with the location and photographs of existing street signage are included at Appendix 22. Members will be aware that a report on this application was previously brought to this committee on the 1st of April 26 and on the 6th of May 26. At the 6th of May meeting of this committee, members recommended that the Council exercise its discretionary power to erect dual language street signage at Ballyoran Hill. However, at the full Council meeting of the 26th of May, a Council motion was passed which recommended that the decision of this committee on the 6th of May be deferred until a legal workshop was held to discuss how members take on board the weighting and lawful considerations where strong objections are made by those who are not residents. That requested legal workshop was subsequently held, as members will know, on the 23rd of June. With regards to the result of the Council survey, the requisite threshold under the policy has therefore been met, i.e. responses in agreement to this application represent not less than 2/3 of all occupiers of premises on that street. Again, as per Article 11 of the legislation, it is now a matter for members to decide whether or not to use Council's discretionary power to approve this application for dual language street signage. Recommendation, therefore, for members is to review the information contained within this report and decide whether or not to use Council's discretionary power to approve the application received by the Council for dual language street signage in respect of Ballyoran Hill in Portadown. Thank you, Chair, and I'm happy to take any questions members may have.
Thank you again, Tom. Okay, members, 4.5 is with you. Councillor Paul Duffy.
Yes, Chair. Yes, there's been a lot said about the workshop, and this is under the same sort of principles. I propose that the Council uses discretionary power to accept the application for dual language signage at Ballyoran Hill, Portadown.
Thank you. Councillor Peter Lavery.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Tom. Although this application is very, very similar to Cochrane Gardens, I think it's duty upon ourselves to make sure it's thoroughly analysed separately, even though if there's maybe a lot of rhyming between the two. And again, I just want to note, by starting out, yes, it has met the 2/3 policy with the 25 out of 35 responses, which I estimate 71%. So 71% in favour. And I note that there was no additional comments received in objection from the residents themselves. But however, there was those 4 objections from the 2 Royal Blacks, the Loyal Orange Lodge and the Cochrane Rural Development Association objecting to it. Slightly different in terms of the previous one, Cochrane Gardens. Ballyoran Hill's a wee bit further away, and that there's 2 entrances on the Ballyoran Hill, the other side on the Garvahi Road there, but then this side, which I suppose is in a visual, I guess you can see it from the Orange Lodge building. To go over the situation again, the policy is relatively high. That policy has been met in terms of 71% of residents being in favour, therefore would need a relatively high weight on the other side for me to override that. And I will acknowledge the concerns from the 4 objector organisations, some of their comments more generally against the Irish language, but then some specifically in terms of shared spaces and so on. I do not feel that erecting dual language street signs in Ballyoran Hill would impact negatively in terms of shared space connotations, but would more rather add to it. And I think we should note, the name of the street is still going to be in English. It's just a small secondary subscription in the secondary language, in this case Irish. So it's still going to be visualised for most people to be an English street sign. So given all that consideration, although I do acknowledge the 4 objections from those 4 organisations, in my view, I don't feel it meets a high enough, I suppose, weighting to override the weighting in terms of the 71% of residents who have stated firmly that they want dual language street signs. I think it adds to the shared space of the area rather than detracting from it. So hopefully it should not cause any further disruption going forward. So taking all that into favour or into account, I would be of the view that we should use our discretionary powers to approve the dual language street sign up here for Ballyoran Hill. So I'm happy to second that proposal that was made.
Okay, Councillor Kyle Mootray.
Thank you, Chair. And yes, as Councillor Lavery said, it is important to test this against on its own merits. It is very similar to the previous application. As has been mentioned, it does exceed Council's threshold, albeit by a small margin. Whilst the threshold has been met, as I previously alluded to, from the legal workshop and from the advice given by the KC Stuart Beattie, whilst the threshold has been met, the threshold is not the end of the assessment. It's advisory for members of this committee. So look, I do take regard to the fact that the threshold has been met, but I also have to balance that with the 2014 High Court case that does advise councils to take regard of other lawful considerations when looking at such applications. As I've previously stated, we have been made aware of other lawful considerations in the form of objections from 2 Royal Black Preceptories, an Orange Lodge and a Cultural and Developmental Association. Even just to quote the objection that's been received from I believe it was the Community and Developmental Association. They had stated that they had reinforced that it will be detrimental to community relations in the area. And again, we have to balance objections and, of course, the ballot that has been taken on this. Given the seriousness of some of these objections and the seriousness of the nature of the comments, I've previously stated, they've made specific mention to decades of division and violence in this area and how this will, in their view, destabilise community relations and undo some of the recent peace that they've observed in this area. So we have to take that into consideration. I'll certainly be doing that. quite often we look at such applications and we don't receive any sort of written objection. And given the nature of some of the comments made within these objections, and taking into consideration all lawful considerations, I have to apply weight to the seriousness of those comments. So if I could just ask, I think we've already had a proposer and a seconder, can I ask that we take a recorded vote?
Okay, in that case, I take it we don't have agreement then. It's proposed, seconded, and we're going to go again to a recorded vote. Okay, if you just give us a second. The vote is now open, members. Okay. Okay, members are ready to close the vote, and Councillor O'Kane, I can see your light on again there, so I'll come back to you in a second. Can I just check with members that you have all voted? We're about to close the vote here. Okay. Okay, members, the vote is closed. I'm now going to bring in Councillor John O'Kane.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'll be voting yes again. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you for that. Okay, members, the result of the vote is as again 7 voting for the proposal, 2 against and 1 abstention. Those voted for it were Councillor John O'Kane, Councillor Donnelly, Councillor Paul Duffy, Councillor Sarah Duffy, Councillor Peter Lavery, Councillor Chris McCartan, Councillor Kevin Savage. Those against, Councillor Kyle Moutre and myself, and Councillor Alderman Gordon Kennedy was an abstention. Okay, thank you for that, members. So that is passed. We move on then to 4.6, and again at this point I'll bring Tom Lavery in.
Thank you, Chair. Again, by way of background, members will recall that in May 25, Council received an application for dual language street signage, namely Irish, for the Cochrane Mews in Portadown. As for the Council's adopted policy, the application process comprised of 2 stages as set out in the body of the report. And as reported to this committee on the 2nd of July 25, the application was progressed to stage 2 of the process, in that the officers undertook a postal survey to canvass the views of all relevant occupiers on the street. And following verification of the survey responses, I can confirm that the responses are as noted in the body of the report. In the responses received, officers are aware of 1 additional written comment which was in opposition to this application, which is as noted in the body of the report. At the time of writing this report, officers are not aware of any other written views opposing or supporting this application. The requisite threshold under the policy has therefore been met. Specifically, the responses in agreement with the application represent not less than 2/3 of all occupiers of premises in the street for which the application relates. Again, as per Article 11.2 of the legislation, it is now a matter for members to decide whether or not to use council's discretionary power to approve this application for dual language street signage. Recommendation therefore before members is that members review the information contained within the report and decide whether or not to use council's discretionary power to approve this application for dual language street signage for Corcoran Mews in Portadown. Thank you, Chair. I'm happy to take any questions members may have.
Thank you, Tom. Okay, members, 4.6 is open for bring in Councillor Peter Lavery.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks, Tom, for this presenting this report. And again, similar location to a few others that have come to committee today. But just a couple of quick questions. Has there been any other written responses, either in favour or against, outside of those in terms of the residents who were surveyed? And I note that there seemed to be one additional comment here from, I take it would have been one or maybe multiple of the objectors, just saying that limit who buys the address in future years. Are they saying it'll determine its like house price or along those lines? Or was that just the sole extent of the comment or comments? I suppose. Thank you.
Okay, Tom.
Thank you, Chair. In response to Councillor Lavery's question, firstly, that was the only comment made, and that was there is a comment section on the survey responses, and that's the only comment we received. And just to confirm, at this point in time, I have received no other further communication regarding either objections or our support for this application.
Okay, the next speaker is Councillor Kyle Mootwright.
Thank you, Tom. And just in a similar vein, just that stood out to me. The additional comment. And can I just ask then? You may have already answered this, but verbatim, is that what it says exactly? Because it just seems quite vague and it could be misconstrued maybe different ways. So I don't feel like I have total clarity around that.
Thank you, Chair. And in answer to your question, Councillor Mootwright, yes, that is it verbatim. We got no more detail than what's been presented to members than that comment.
Okay, thank you, Tom. Councillor Paul Duffy.
Yes, thank you, Tom, and thanks for the report. No, just on the back of that there, and sort of just can't really give that sort of on my thing, can't let that outweigh what the residents, have gone out of the way, done the petition, passed all the stages and asked for dual language signage to that area. So on the back of all that, I propose that this council accept the recommendation for dual language street signage uses discretionary power to accept the application for dual language street signage at Corcoran Mews, Portadown.
Okay, Councillor Kyle Mootwright.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, just going back to the written objection to that, I believe we have had an application previously where someone had stated they didn't feel comfortable remaining in the area, and that was something that we took into consideration. Can I even ask that we go into legal advice regarding this comment, just so we could gain a wee bit more clarity as to where exactly we stand?
Okay, members, can we have a proposer and seconder that we go into committee to discuss this? Seconded by, proposed by Councillor Kyle Mootwright, seconded by Councillor Peter Lavery, and agreed. Thank you. and we're now in public session. Thank you. And at this point, I want to bring in Councillor Paul Duffy.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I just noted the comment just was about house prices, and basically right across the borough, I don't see any house prices dropping anywhere for basically any reason. Everything is just going up and up and up. So just my comment.
Okay, Councillor Peter Lavery.
Thank you, Chair. I suppose just provide some summarising comments regarding this application for Cochrane Mews. Yeah, it's an interesting one, so it got very clear. I suppose every resident has made a view on it through the survey. 16 in favour, 3 against, really 84% in favour, 16% against. So it's quite a high percentage in favour, albeit those 3 objections, you don't want it, whereas the 16 are in favour. And then in terms of the additional comment, which is sort of an extra factor in this, I suppose as when you look at it, it's more maybe assertion rather than a lot of in terms of detail or in evidence in terms of local house pricing decreasing in the area, maybe for other locations who have dual language street signs, either this and in the borough. Anecdotally, I think it was Councillor Duffy said, house prices are going up. Unfortunately, house prices are continuing to go up. A lot of people are finding it difficult to buy property in the borough, and until a lot of properties are sort of built in a lot faster fashion, we're probably going to continue to see that increase unless there's a recession or anything of that nature. So, although I acknowledge the comment, it's not like planning committee where we can't it's not a material planning consideration, so to speak, in terms of house price impact. It is a consideration, and I do take it into my consideration in terms of my view on this application. Albeit at this time, my view would be that I think, on the balance, I would be still in support of this application, given that the threshold has been well met at 84%, even though there's this comment on the other side of it. But I think we just need to have maybe a bit more meat in the bones in terms of an evidential basis in order for it to be provided additional weight to overturn the positive outcome. So, summing up, Chair, I will be in support of Council using its using its power in terms of this dual language application for this street. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Lavery. I believe that Councillor Duffy has proposed it. Do we have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor McCartan. And agreed? Okay, members, thank you. Moving on then, in relation to item point 5, correspondence, we don't have any. And we're now going to move back into confidential session. Can I have a proposer and seconder that we go into confidential, please? Councillor Lavery proposed. Councillor seconder, come on. Councillor McCartan, thank you. Move into council. Members and online viewers, in accordance with Schedule 6 of the Local Government Act, we will now be moving into confidential session of the Council. This means we'll be turning off the public feed of the meeting. This will be returned when the meeting is restarted. Can I ask ICT officers to please turn off the feed and confirm with me when the confidential section can proceed? Okay, and so we're out of, can we check that the live feed started? It is. Okay, we have one AOB and that's from Councillor Peter Lavery in relation to planning enforcement. So Councillor Lavery, go for it.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, Mayo Basin Plan Enforcement Team. Firstly, I'd like to pay a tribute to Una and her team and Plan Enforcement, who do a substantial amount of work right across this borough, and it's often unseen in terms of protecting residents' rights and in terms of ensuring the integrity of council's processes being fulfilled, that conditions are being met and so on, that everyone's playing on that same playing field. I suppose what I've encountered in recent year too, I'm certainly encountering a lot more maybe plan enforcement issues, and due to the nature of them, sometimes it can be very, very complex. I'm cognizant that the plan enforcement team is a relatively small team. This is a relatively big borough, and we've got a lot of plan applications going through, a lot of approvals, a lot of conditions, and a lot of bits and pieces that are happening. I think it would be good that if a report's brought in future regarding the work of the plan enforcement team, the amount of cases they're handling, their workload requirements, resourcing, and things like that, and in terms of like how I suppose speedily they're moving through, you know, in terms of average time for a case to open, for it to be closed, and things like that, so that we can be adequately briefed. Because as I said before, it's a really, really important team. It's not just that we approve plan applications and then they're built and everything goes on along those lines. Issues do occur. Sometimes, you know, corners are cut, and then need to ensure that residents have their rights upheld and ensure that all applicants are said on that same playing field in terms of that rules are being followed. So it's a really crucial team to provide integrity to the whole planning process. And I just feel that they're under a lot of pressure, because it seems to me that there's, you know, a lot of sort of cases going on and a lot of complex cases. So if a report could be brought to a future committee, I suppose just on that team and the work of the team, well, it's Una presenting or whoever, and then some of the metrics that could be maybe presented to committee on a regular basis, so we can keep up to speed with progress and things like that, because I think it's maybe a wee bit hidden at the minute, and I'd like to put them in the spotlight in terms of the substantial good work that they've been doing. Thank you.
Okay, I'll bring in Robbie McNaughter, Head of Planning.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for your item and your recognition of the work of the team. Very happy to bring that back. And you look from the business plan, we have an item to enhance the planning services, and part of that was a review of the enforcement processes, putting together an action plan to help reduce the number of cases. We've developed that action plan, and be happy to give you some sight of that. And really, the team, you know, are always under pressure, and cases are increasingly complicated, and we are probably one of the busiest teams there are, and we're looking at streamlining that in the first instance to make sure we're working as efficiently as we possibly can, and updating customers as much as we can. It can be difficult when cases are complex, and we could prejudice the outcome, and I think you understand that. So we do have to be cautious, but we're also updating our enforcement strategy, and that'll look at our overall approach and give a greater clarity to members of the public on how we will handle things. So I'm happy to bring some metrics to you in September and that action plan, so that you can have greater sight of that.
Okay, thank you for that, Robbie. Members, there will now be a short recess until consideration of planning applications commences at 4 p.m. Thank you. 7 applications for planning permission to be considered. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the planning section of the meeting. Audio recording is being used to assist in preparing the formal minutes. Therefore, anyone participating in the meeting consents to it being recorded and being live streamed on YouTube. Also, during the course of this section of the meeting, questions may be asked by councillors who are members of planning committee, of planning officers, applicants for planning permission, objectors, or those speaking on their behalf. In doing so, councillors endeavour to ascertain the information they feel is necessary to enable them to determine the application. However, members of the public should note that councillors will not reach a conclusion as to whether an application should be refused, approved, or deferred until the debate on the application has been concluded. The appendix item 3 application number LA 08 2022 1225F has been withdrawn from the schedule to receiving an amended scheme which requires officers to re-advertise and reconsult on. There are 5 items for decision this afternoon. Appendix number 1 is the application LO8 2025-0022F Gosford Rentals Limited. I'm going to bring in Roisin Hamill, Principal Planning Officer, to present the report at this time. Roisin.
Thank you, Chair. This application, which is for a proposed change of use from dwelling to a 5-person, 5-bedroom HMO and construction of a single-storey rear extension. Members will recall this application was originally presented to committee on the 3rd of June 2026 with a recommendation to approve. At that meeting, it was agreed by members to overturn the officer's recommendation and refuse the application, subject to bringing the application back before members to agree the reasons for refusal. The reason, as set out in the report, has been prepared by officers having regard to the discussions held at the June meeting of the Planning Committee. Officers are recommending that members agree the refusal reason as set out. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that, Roisin. Is there any member wishes to speak in relation to this application? Councillor Kyle Mootwright.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, it was myself that made the proposal to refuse this application, and yes, I viewed the report and I'm content with the wording. It was made on the basis that it would cause demonstrable harm by way of overconcentration and the effect that would, the adverse impact that would have on the character of the immediate area. So I'm content with that wording. I'm not sure if that needs a further proposal. If it does, I'm happy to do so.
I'm advised, yes, it needs a proposal, so we'll take that as a proposal from yourself. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Wilson. And are we agreed, members? Thank you. Moving on then to appendix number 2, and this is the application number LA 08 2025-0955F from Adam Kurishi. A refusal again. I'll bring Roisin in again.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, this application is for a proposed change of use from a dwelling to a 6-person, 6-bedroom HMO on the Tandragee Road. This application was also presented to committee on the 3rd of June 2026 with a recommendation to approve, and at that meeting it was agreed by members to overturn officer's recommendation and refuse the application, subject to bringing the application back before members to agree the reason for refusal. And the reason as set out in the report has been prepared by officers having regard to the discussions held at the June meeting, and officers are recommending that members agree the refusal reason as set out.
Thank you, Roisin, for that. Councillor Kyle Mootwright again.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, the proposal was made on the basis that I deemed that to be in contravention of the SPPS, on the basis that it would cause demonstrable harm by way of overconcentration and cause adverse impact to the character of the area, that particular section of the Tandragee Road. So, yes, happy to propose this wording, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Ian Wilson and agreed. Thank you. Moving on then to Appendix 4, application number LA 08 2024 0025 from Ms Valerie Davidson. I'm going to bring Nicola Craney, Senior Planning Officer, in on this one.
Thank you, Chair. This is an outline application for an infill dwelling on lands immediately northwest of number 94 Plantation Road, Bleary. The application site is located in the rural area. It's approximately 1.4 kilometres south of Bleary. Officers consider that the proposal accords with the Strategic Planning Policy Statement, Edition 2, and all the relevant planning policies. Officers are satisfied that the application site constitutes a small gap within an otherwise substantial and continuously built-up frontage, which respects the existing development pattern along the frontage in terms of scale, size, siding and plot size in accordance with the requirements of CTY 8 of PPS 21 and complies with other relevant policies as set out within the body of the report. Officers have taken into consideration all material matters, including letters of representation, and considered any material harm that the development would otherwise give rise to can be offset by conditions. On this basis and subject to the conditions, it's recommended that permission be granted. I'll just go through the proper presentation. As you can see, the Bleary is just to the north, and this is the location of the site in the general area. This is the site location plan. And this is an aerial view of the site. This is the concept plan which we are looking to use in terms of the guidance for conditions. Next slide. This is some detail really in regards to the private laneway, which has been subject to the objections and the properties that currently exist along this laneway. Next slide. And this is an aerial photograph just showing those dwellings just numbered along that laneway. Next slide. This is a view of the site then from the laneway, just looking in immediately. There's an open area and then a lot of the area has planted trees. Next slide, please. This is just in front of the site, and there's been mentioned in the report from the objectors about an old tree which is along the frontage, which they requested for protection, and that's the tree itself, which you can see in the photographs. You can see number 94 just immediately behind the tree there, and it's looking south. Next slide, please. Again, that's number 94, and that's the photograph's just slightly further forward where you can see the entrance to the site. Next slide, please. This is number 94 Plantation Road. Next slide. This is along the same laneway, but because the laneway actually joins Plantation Road and Ballydugan Road, there are different names of addresses, but it's the same laneway. This is number 32 Ballydugan Road. Further along then there's a disused dwelling just immediately north of number 32 Ballydugan Road. Next slide, please. This is a view then, you can see the site just immediately on the left, and number 32 is further along the laneway. Next slide, please. That concludes the presentation.
Okay, thank you for that, Nicola. Moving on then to members' questions. Are there any? Councillor Peter Lavery.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Nicola, for the presentation. I suppose two questions have come to mind. I've just give them both at the one time, Chair. Firstly, in terms of the private laneway, there's your indication that it's a private laneway and that some objectors may not allow the lane to be used by this new owner, or sort of if the house is built. Can you provide some clarity as to if that's legal? So we look in a situation here where we could give an approval on the house, but if the other residents of the lane say it can't be accessed, well then, is that a consideration? Because then it wouldn't be able to be used as a property if you can't legally get vehicles up that private laneway. So just clarity in terms of what rights would this resident have in terms of access to the property up this private laneway if the other residents are sort of saying that they own it and they're declining admission. And then the second query in terms of this old tree, which the residents suggested maybe should have a TPO on it. I note that officers have said, it doesn't meet the criteria for a TPO. Could go into a bit more details in terms of, what assessments were done on the tree and where the tree failed in terms of meeting the quality for a TPO to be issued. So those two questions on right of access for the resident on the laneway and then the TPO. Thank you.
Okay, Nicola.
Thank you. In regards to your first question on the private laneway, planning doesn't confer title. They have completed the correct certificates. They have advised the owners of the laneway in regards to the application. The issues in regards to access to the site, that's a legal issue which any occupier of the property would need to consider when they're purchasing the property. We can't guarantee that there's an access. That's something which is a separate legal and private issue amongst the residents and the prospective occupier. The laneway, I think it's owned in different parts by different people, and that does complicate it for the potential occupier, but as I say, it's not a planning issue because notice has been served, and the laneway, as you've seen in the site location plan, is from the south towards the Plantation Road, and notice has been served on all of the owners along that stretch. The owner of the lands immediately to the north, if they're able to close that lane up, which they've suggested, that's within their ownership and control, and it's something that they could look at. And I have addressed that within the addendum report that was submitted today. The second question then you had in regards to the TPO tree, we have looked at the tree itself, and we have assessed it against the requirements for a TPO. We have an officer who makes that judgment, and it has been assessed in regards to that, and the criteria. I'm just looking at what. It's unusual for to it's unusual for to provide a TPO in the rural area for something like this, and as I say, just let me a second. Sorry. The details then in regards to it. The criteria for a TPO are that it has to have a potential threat, visibility, individual impact, wider impact, historical importance and variety. There was an assessment then completed in regards to that, and it was suggested then that this tree could actually be protected by way of planning condition rather than through a TPO tree. So it has been fully assessed, and there is a desktop assessment being completed in regards to that. There is a condition attached to the report in regards to the retention of the tree, and the agent has confirmed that the tree isn't required to be removed as part of the application.
Okay, thank you for that, Nicola. The next question is from Councillor Kevin Savage.
Thank you, Chair. And Nicola, thanks for your report. Nicola, I noticed one of the objections related to bats and swifts, and in the report it states that NIEA, the competent authority, considered impacts of the proposals on designated sites and other natural heritage interests and have no concerns subject to recommendations. As part of the application, I'm just interested to know, was there a bat survey completed on that, or was it necessary? Thank you, Chair.
Bring you in again, Nicola.
Thank you, Chair. There was a biodiversity checklist complete, and additional support and information was requested in regard to that. There wasn't a bat survey completed, but the site was assessed by a competent ecologist, and we did carry out consultation with NIEA in regard to the proposal, and they have no objection. Yeah, a biodiversity checklist and an ecological survey was completed.
Okay, thank you for that. Okay, other member questions or discussion around this application? Councillor Lavery.
I just have a wee question, Chair, but it might be a legal question. So if maybe I ask it in legal, and then we'll see if we can ask it in confident or open business, if that's okay.
At that point then, can we have a proposer and seconder, Councillor Savage and Councillor Lavery, that we go into closed session? Thank you. Okay, members, I'm informed that we're now back in public session. Are there any other questions, or do we have any proposals in relation to this application? Councillor Kevin Savage.
Thank you, Chair. Just based on what we've heard from Nicola and also what we heard in legal there, I would be minded to propose we accept the officer's recommendation. It came up before around ownership of land in planning committee, and as we've been told many times before, it's not a planning consideration. The applicant would be well aware of that before they've made that, so the issue is not for us. So I'd be minded to accept the officer's recommendation based on what I've heard today, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, and thank you. Do we have someone to second these? Okay, Alderman Kennedy seconded, and are we agreed, members? Okay, I'm hearing nothing to the contrary then, so we're agreed. Thank you. Move on then to Appendix Item 5, which is application number LA 08 2025-0866F Court O'Larry Developments Limited. I'm going to bring Roisin Hamill, Principal Planning Officer, in on this one. And we'll just wait a wee second, Roisin, until the Speaker who wishes to make representation and support comes in. Okay, Roisin, we'll bring you in now. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. This is a retrospective application for the erection of one retail unit to be used for mixed convenience and comparison shopping at Bridgewater Park. It's adjacent to existing units including Home Bargains, Easy Living, M&S. The application is being presented to committee tonight as the application is a major application. The proposal is essentially the amendment to the unit and garden centre approved under application LA 08 2024-0354 to increase the size of Unit 10 from 1,026 square metres gross floor space to 2,052 square metres gross floor space, and repositioning of the approved garden centre with the amendments to the approved car park layout. A change in the use of the type of retailing is also proposed. The main elements of the proposal are construction of Unit 10 to be used as a mixed convenience and comparison retail warehouse with increased floor space as set out, provision of a garden centre which will provide 760 metres net floor space. The garden centre will be connected to Unit 10 by internal sliding doors and will have no roof. A revised parking layout. Parking spaces are provided to the front and side of the building. The revised arrangement includes the omission of a drive-through restaurant approved under planning application LA 08 2024-0354-F, and the reconfiguration of that area to provide additional parking, together with the retention and reconfiguration of 352 spaces associated with the Game of Thrones uses. The proposal includes a rear service yard with access to the site provided via an existing roundabout within the retail park, which currently serves the adjacent retail units. The proposal introduces as an element of convenience retailing, but this forms only a small portion of the overall floor space and does not undermine the retail warehouse function of the park. A sequential assessment has been submitted which demonstrates there are no suitable available or variable alternative sites within Banbridge or Dromore. The retail impact and need assessment has been submitted which demonstrates a need for the proposed development as set out in more detail in the report. It also demonstrates the proposal expected to retain local expenditure and enhance retail choice without causing significant harm to Banbridge Town Centre. Predicted trade diversion levels are modest and well within acceptable thresholds. The design, layout and scale of the development integrates appropriately with the existing retail park, and all technical matters including access, traffic, drainage, ecology and amenity have been satisfactorily addressed. 2 letters of objection to the proposal have been received, and all of the matters raised have been fully considered in detail in the report. On balance, the proposal represents sustainable development in line with the SPPS, and it is recommended for approval subject to the conditions as set out. And I'll just take you through the slides. So the red arrow shows you where we are. It's just to the south of Banbridge on the A1 dual carriageway. So this is an aerial view of the site, and the proposed unit is to the southeastern end of the linear development that you see to the northern end of the photograph. And this is our site location plan. So it's the site is the eastern portion, and the access road is outlined in red as well. This is our proposed site layout. So the units shaded in blue are the additional spaces being created by the extension of Unit 10 and the garden centre. So this is the approved layout that was approved under the 2024-354 application, and you can see there are 3 drive-through units there, so one of those won't be developed as part of the current proposal. And this is the extant approval on the site. So this is a 2006 application which proposes a significant amount of retail warehousing floor space on the site, and this is a live approval and represents a fallback position for the applicant, as you'll see in the report. So this is a proposed floor plan. Again, the extension to Unit 10 is shaded in blue with the garden centre in green. And this is just the proposed elevations, and you can see the elevations replicates the existing frontage in terms of size, scale, design and finishes. So this is the location of the proposed unit just on the edge, and use the garden centre to the right hand side there, which will be enclosed by a paladin fence. And these are just a picture of the adjacent retail units, so you can see there is some uniformity in terms of size and design. And these are the existing occupied retail units further to the west of the site. And this is standing up at the unit looking back down towards the car park. And then this is just over at the factory outlet centre looking across at the site, and that's the car parking area which will be reconfigured, but those 352 spaces for the Game of Thrones site will be retained. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for that, Roisin. At this point, can I welcome Eamon Lochray, Kyle Porter and Richard Agos to the meeting. Eamon, I believe you're the person who's going to make the representation, and we'll ask you to do it now, and you have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, Chair and committee members. On behalf of my clients, Gorta Lowry, I welcome the recommendation of the planning officer. This is a significant application that will allow the delivery of a new retailer to Bridgewater Park, B&M Bargains, with a garden centre whilst maintaining the 352 parking spaces for the Game of Thrones park and ride. We've worked carefully with the council officers to provide a detailed proposal that deals with all aspects of the application in terms of retail policy, design, parking, access, drainage and ecology. As a major application, we carried out a full pre-application community consultation. We have worked closely with the operators of Game of Thrones tourism facility and ensured that they are in agreement with the application proposed. We've demonstrated to the department that the site already benefits from a significant retail permission and that this proposal will not cause any harm to any protected town centre. We've demonstrated that there is no sequentially preferable sites for the proposal. The proposal is partially in compliance with the adopted local development plan, and there are material considerations that outweigh any perceived conflict with the plan. Bridgewater Park is clearly identified in the local development plan as the location that will accommodate additional retailing in Banbridge, and the proposal is consistent with this. There is a policy-based need and a qualitative need for this proposal that will introduce a new discounter to the area, which will complement the other shops already located in Bridgewater and the rest of Banbridge without any harmful impacts on the town centre. The proposal will provide 40 new jobs and represents a further £1 million investment into the site by Gorta Lowry on top of the already invested £5.5 million. The proposal is consistent with the local development plan, the strategic planning policy statement and the relevant regional planning policy statements. Given the foregoing, I respectfully request the committee allow the application. We'd be happy to answer any questions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for that. And the floor is now open to any members who have got any questions in relation to this application. I'm not seeing any indication of any questions. Okay. Okay, are there any comments or any debate around this application, members? Okay, in that case then, I'm asking members, do we have a proposal for this application? Councillor Kevin Savage propose and someone to second, seconded by Councillor Ian Wilson, and agreed. Okay, thank you, members. Okay, thank you. Okay, members, we'll move on to Appendix Item 6, was an application number LA08 2025-0842F, Armagh County Agricultural Show Society. Trudy Chapman, the Senior Planning Officer, will present on this one. Before that, I want to bring in Alderman Gordon Kennedy.
Thank you, Chair. I have a number of family members on the committee of Armagh Show, so good night, Irene.
Thank you for that, Alderman Kennedy. Okay, and at this point then we'll bring in Trudy Chapman.
Thank you, Chair. The application seeks full planning permission for the erection of a storage shed within the existing enclosed yard at Gosford Forest Park and is before you as the Council has an interest in the land. The shed would be used for the storage of plant, equipment and materials associated with the annual Armagh County Show. The site is already used for storage purposes and contains existing storage structures. The site lies within Gosford Forest Park, which is open space, a tourism asset and a designated historic park, garden and domain. Officers are satisfied that the proposal would not result in the loss of open space, as the development is already confined to an existing storage yard. The proposed shed is modest in scale, finished in dark green cladding, and would be visually contained within this existing area by boundary treatment and mature vegetation. It's therefore considered acceptable in terms of principal siting, design and integration. Consultees have raised no objection. HED are content that it won't have any adverse effect on the registered domain, nearby monuments or the adjacent listed buildings. DFI Roads have no objection given the use of the existing access and internal road network, and Natural Heritage are satisfied, subject to conditions relating to tree protection and the use of the building, that the proposal will not adversely affect protected species habitats or European sites. In terms of residential amenity, the nearest dwelling is Sharp's House, which is also a listed building. This lies immediately adjacent to the site. However, as the application is for storage use only, and the site is separated by mature boundary, officers and Environmental Health have no objections. Environmental Health have recommended conditions on the control of the use and the delivery and removal hours of the use of the building in order to protect residential amenity, and no third-party representations have been received. Officers therefore consider the proposal complies with the SVPS and all relevant planning policies, recommend the application be approved subject to the conditions set out in the report.
Okay, thank you for that. Sorry, you're coming to your presentation. I'm too quick here. Hit your button again there, please, Trudy.
This is our location of the site within the general area. And this is our site location plan. So the access route in is the same as anybody going into Gosford. And our aerial photograph of the site within the wider area. So it's difficult to see on that, but there's a slight clearing. You'll see it better on the next one. Go to the next one. So slight clearing just slightly left of centre there is where our site is. And the next slide, please. So this is taken within the site, looking at the existing structure. So we've got the Nissan hut on a couple of containers. And the next slide, please. So these are taken from within the site, one looking west and one looking back towards the entrance. The entrance at the minute is corrugated iron sheets. So it's well enclosed. There's a vehicular access, and as part of that, pedestrian access in through the same gates. Next slide, please. So this is taken from the internal state road, showing you the access arrangement. And just to the left of the top photo is Sharp's House, the listed building adjacent, and then that's a better picture of it on the lower photograph. This is the proposed floor plans and elevations. It's proposed that there'll be no doors. This is just for storage, so they're open. Given the arrangement and the enclosure that it's already in, they don't require any doors to it. The next slide, please. So this is the existing layout and the proposed layout. So the existing trees will all be retained around the boundaries of it. And then the last slide should show you the proposed section, which shows it in relation to the existing building on the site and Sharp's house to the side of it. And that's me. Thank you very much.
Lovely. Thank you very much for that. Trudy, okay. Any member questions or comments around this? Councillor Kevin Savage.
Thank you, Chair. Trudy, thanks for your report. Trudy, it's just maybe from my own interest, I maybe missed it in the report, but the existing storage seems to be in a very poor state of repair, just looking at the pictures. Are the planning still keeping that with the new structure they're having, or is that going as part of the application? Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Chair. No, at this stage it's the intention to keep those as well. It's not part of the proposal to take them down at this stage, although ultimately if they did want to take them down, they don't require plan permission for that. So,
Thank you. Anyone else? Councillor Kyle Moutray.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, not a question as such, but just a comment. It seems to be a very straightforward application, and obviously there's been no representations received, and hopefully it'll make life a little bit easier for those involved in the county show. So that's it.
Do I take that as a proposal? Okay. Councillor Peter Lavery.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, it was similar to Councillor Mucha, had more comment that it's important that there's adequate facilities in order for to run events in the park. Armagh show is a big one, and the location seems to be almost hidden away as not to reduce amenity and visibility and things like that. So it seems to be fairly well put together application. The only thing is, I was a bit surprised that there was no doors on the shed. I thought that, inclement weather and, other bits and pieces that they may want to put doors in it or roll down at some stage, which I think would be positively looked on, to make sure everything's nice and secure in there. But if that's the application before us, we'll have to take a decision on that, and I'd be, content to second that proposal in order for the facilities to be improved in this valuable resource in council and Gosford Forest Park. It's used by tens of thousands of people a year, and it just helps to put on some other nice events for the residents in the wider area. I think it's a win-win all round.
Okay, thank you. I'll bring in Trudy Chapman again.
thank you, Chair. Councillor Lavery, that's actually something that we queried with the agent. The site doesn't have electricity or running water to it. So to put doors on it meant they would have to put electricity in and dig up through the domains, so they didn't want to do that. They're content that the site is secure enough and it's been designed in such a way that everything should be secure and watertight in it, so it wasn't a concern for them at this time. Thank you.
Okay, on that basis, we have proposed and seconded, or we agreed in relation to this application. Okay, thank you. It's good to hear that. Okay, members, that brings an end to today's business. At this point in time, can I ask that the